want to prepare you. You were saying you downloaded the PowerPoint?
Yeah, I downloaded. Do you want me to proofread those or just go over them? Or
no, go over them. Add where you want. If there's anything I missed, or you want to. It's just those of you that will be joining us in a moment or watching the replay are like, what are these guys talking about? My name is Rich Brown, retired Marine Corps officer, former police officer, corrections officer, etc. Regional manager for disaster preparedness and government ops in times of emergencies. I am now with the American Warrior Society and have been for the last 11 years. My good friend, Dr. T.C. Fuller, a retired FBI agent. Dr. Fuller is the the author of some amazing books. Many of them you will see behind him: Painting Over Rust, Empathy for the Devil, and No Safe Alternative. And if you're coming to the High Risk Environment course, November the 17th to the 21st, you will get to hang out with Dr. Fuller at your leisure. Pick his brain as much as possible and probably pick up a signed copy of one of his books if you're lucky.
Yeah, I wasn't able to re-up my stocks in time, so I'm bringing what I've got. So,
yeah, Justin Carroll, same thing. His book dropped November the 1st, and he called me yesterday. I was in the gym, and he's like, "Man, I'm not going to have them in time." Amazon, for whatever reason, is taking like 2 and 3 weeks to get the books out. Is that what you're finding?
Yeah, well, what it is, if you order the book to buy it, you can have it tomorrow. But if you order author's copies, which is at a reduced rate, obviously, because they don't incorporate your pittance of a profit on there, they send that out in bulk mail rate. So you'll get your regular book from Amazon overnight. I will get my bulk books in anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks. So
yeah, that kind of stinks.
It is what it is. Yeah. But it's funny because, completely off topic here, but when you publish through traditional publishers, which I've done, and then you publish on your own, which I've done, the amount of ways people come with trying to take money out of your profit margin is actually quite impressive. I mean, people really put forth the effort to get a piece of your pie. It's pretty impressive.
Yes, it is. Sorry about that, Dr. Fuller. I'm making a comment here.
From your own publishing experience.
I do. Have you ever? I was Googling my book on violence and varietals, and it gives you this little AI synopsis of it, and it was interesting to read what AI had scraped from the internet. I'm like, I didn't disagree with that. I kind of found it very flattering. But Jim is on from Indiana. He has coin number 182. Wow, sir, you are. Ooh. You've been in it from the beginning. Congratulations. I think he did 6 folks watching us live. Guile is on. Says, good morning, gentlemen. He is over there in the Philippines. Bruce is on up there in Michigan, coin number 481. Today is going to kind of be a review of a show that we did November of 2023. So here we are. Exactly 1 year. I think it was actually released on the Marine Corps birthday, November the 10th, 2023. So I want to kind of look back on it because there was a lot of chatter in the American Warrior Society closed group about, hey man, where are we? What ended up happening with this? And you put this red lines and exit strategies show together. What's going on? And I'm like, okay, well, maybe Dr. Fuller and I can do a show on it and kind of talk through some of the things. So thank you to the 8 folks watching us live. Please hit that share button.
And let's define our terms. What are we talking about? Exit strategies, red lines. What are we're talking about? What does that mean?
Ooh, great question. So as far as I'm concerned, as an amateur historian and someone who has read a lot of books on civil conflict and genocides and civil war, it seems to me that it's just around the corner. At this point, it's pretty much inevitable. Every empire, kind of fades out in some sort of a conflict, internal strife. And I, in thinking about it, I kind of made a determination that I don't want to be a part of it for a variety of reasons that I'm going to enumerate later in the show. My family has, being a Southerner, we've shared in the horrors of the Civil War as marauding Union armies came through, raping and pillaging and doing what marauding Union armies do as part of the War of Northern Aggression. You probably call it something else as a Californian. But no, so
yeah, we were busy digging for gold while you were fighting.
In all seriousness, though, I mean, a lot of it's tongue in cheek, but at the same time, the cultural memory, as I've mentioned 1,000 times on the show, is there. And so I see this cauldron brewing 2, 3, 4 years ago. And actually, if you want to go back 10 years ago when Ciclin and I put this whole American Warrior Society thing together, it wasn't a preparation for an invading army. For God's sake, I don't think any foreign nation has the power to do anything even remotely close to that. And Lincoln talked about that. He goes, all the armies of Europe could not, come across the Cumberland Mountains and drink a drop from the Ohio River, in a trial of 1,000,000 years or something like that. That's pretty close to paraphrase what he said. And I agree with that. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about an internal nightmare, which to me is, I don't know about you, Dr. Fuller, it seems way worse than T-72 tanks rolling down the Cumberland Gap.
Well, civil wars traditionally tend to be really, really nasty. They always have been in terms of the historical record. I mean, pick one. Pick the Civil War that hasn't displayed humanity at its absolute worst. So there's really no reason to think it would be any different here.
Yeah, and there's some, relatively recent examples we can look at. The war in Bosnia. Yugoslavia had just a year or two before been the Winter Olympic Games. And it was just it drew in everybody in Europe and around the world, and it was just a paradise. And the next thing you know, your grandma can't go out onto the street and get a thing of water to survive without getting shot and killed. So, I mean, I think the idea that it can't happen here because there's a Starbucks that's like over there, it's freaking ridiculous, man.
Well, and we do such a poor job of teaching that in our history classes to our younger children that it's no wonder that we have an entire generation that simply doesn't understand how close to the edge we operate.
Yeah. So with all that context, I kind of like, what kind of a point system should I put to this? And that way it takes the emotion out of it, right?
For making the decision to leave, correct? For making the
Exactly.
decision to, okay, I'm out. I don't want to be part of this. It's inevitable. It's gonna happen, not eventually, but next week or next month. So you set up a point system for yourself to say, okay, when this happens, when these lines are tripped, what we call the military phase lines. When I hit these phase lines, I'm out. And where am I going to go and what am I going to do and who's going with me? So that's the context that we're talking about here, correct?
That's exactly right, Dr. Fuller. So, and the family was all briefed on it. And, we all kind of, and again, when I say the family, for those that don't know, of 11 folks watching, I got a little 14-acre farm here, and we have 4 homes on the farm, and my children are kind of scattered in these farms. And that's what the Browns have done as far back as 7 generations that I can track. They're very clannish. We brought that shit from the Western, Western Scotland into here, and 8 generations, we've not moved any further than 25 miles.
But in the intervening 2 years since you originally published this, your personal situation has changed.
That is correct. So in the intervening 2 years since I said, hey, man, 10 points and I'm going to bounce. And if you can see the bottom there, we're already at 17. And I haven't even updated this in over a year. So that's just where it was when I went, hey, man. My father's health has deteriorated. Of course, he lives on a house here on our property. And I thought, the doctors don't know how he's still alive, but here he is.
Well, this brings up a question for me. When you originally published this, Rich, who was in that circle that was going to move with you? If you departed the country, who were you envisioning at that moment in time would be included in that evacuation?
Great question. So it would be me and my wife, my daughter and her new husband. Pops would probably stay back, but with family, and my brother and his wife are kind of on the fence whether they would go or not. If Jeff is on here, he can say, no, I was going. I don't
They lived
remember.
in Florida at the time, correct?
Lived in Florida on a sailboat in Key West. So there was a little bit of scattering, but as far as like Lisa and I, we're going. And then it became my youngest daughter and her husband were like, we're going too.
And the other 3 children?
They had no children at the time. And that's part of
your other 3 children.
My other 3, yeah, Grant was going to go and Aiden was going to go. So our 2 sons were going to go. My one daughter and her husband, my oldest daughter and her husband were going to stay.
So you're envisioning 6 people, if my math is correct.
That sounds right. Yeah.
All of them adults.
All adults.
Okay.
All educated adults that were, going to be able to pay their own way. And again, we weren't planning on leaving forever. We were just going to, home hire, and I'll talk through some of what the plan actually was here in just a second.
But no infants, no grade school kids, no invalid elderly folks. Okay.
With the exception of Dad, and I'm looking back on it, I don't really remember what the hell my plan was. Maybe put him in a nursing home. I honestly don't remember what the plan was, but he was pretty self-sufficient at the time for an 80-something, for an 79-year-old guy that smoked 5 packs of cigarettes a day. He had his own car, he had his own house, he was getting around just fine, doing his own stuff.
And I bring this up not just for the context of your decision-making metrics for you personally, but also to illustrate to the audience that you got to make these decisions based on your situation and your priorities and who that circle is. Maybe it's just you, maybe it's you and 25 people, and maybe it's infants. I don't know, but you've got to do exactly what you did, Rich, in that you have to triage that order of priority.
Exactly. And I looked at it no different though. As some people will know, I have a pub in my home, and the pub is named the 4 Pounds. And I called it that because that's what it cost to go from Northern Ireland or Western Scotland to the Americas. We're not an immigrant. Let's be clear about that. You were just settling in one English settlement to another English settlement, from the Ulster plantations of Northern Ireland as an English settler there amongst the Catholic heathen to the wilds of Pennsylvania and on down the wagon road into what later became Tennessee and Kentucky and North Carolina. So having said that, 4 pounds was a lot of freaking money, Dr. Fuller. 4 pounds in that time, I'm told, was roughly the equivalent of what an engineer would make today. So let's call it $8,000 to $10,000 roughly. And that's per person. And when you came, you were only allotted to bring, you could take one sheet and whatever you could put in that one sheet folded up. So they came here basically with nothing, and they got 1 meal a day, and it's blah, 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 blah. And Jeff says, I'll be where my brother is. That brings a tear to my eye, brother. Michael Gentili is on. Good morning, sir. Johnny King is on up in the beautiful Bluegrass Commonwealth of Kentucky. Just mention your state. Will Rhodes is on from Missouri. Jack is on in Arkansas. Thank you so much for everyone that is joining us. John Shriver is on from Yukon, Oklahoma. Hope all is doing well. So, yeah, it was kind of like a reverse migration, just to kind of get out, let things settle down, as I think they ultimately will. But right now, nobody seems to be building an off-ramp. That's my opinion.
Yeah, we've talked about that on the show multiple times, is everybody seems in such a headlong rush to get to where they want to be that nobody is really talking about, hey, let's back up off the edge here. They seem, and this is both sides. I mean, they both seem hell-bent on beating the other guy.
Hence, here we are, Dr. Fuller. We're in the longest government shutdown in American history.
Hey, you don't have to tell me. My wife works for the federal government. She's not getting paid, so still out there working for you, though, folks.
Yeah, I tell you, man, and I have friends that are in the nuclear security industry, and they have been, but as I'm told, as of the end of November, even they won't get paid. So even the people that are actually guarding special weapons, what are they gonna do? Walk off the job? I mean,
well, at some point, if this has gone 37 days now, if this goes 100 days, the truth of the matter is most people don't have the savings to survive an extended period. So you're going to see that happen. It's going to have to happen because people got to eat.
Yeah.
Their kids got to eat. And we've talked about this before. People are all well and good until their kids are going hungry. And then, all bets are off.
Yeah, that's an absolute fact, which brings us back full circle to what's going on here. And that is what changed in my calculus. Why am I still here? Because I was very clear, like, hey man, I'm not going to stop doing the show. I'll just be doing it from an Airbnb, in Tbilisi or, somewhere in Europe in a safe place with non-extradition treaty, because I don't know how I'll be perceived as someone who bounced out. What government will be happy that Rich left or pissed off that Rich left? Will they shut down my military retirement? I don't know how this works, but so I prepared as much as I could. And then when my granddaughter was born, my dad's health took a turn, and Jeff sold his sailboat. Him and his bride moved up here, and they lived 400 meters away. And my son left his position at the National Laboratory where he was a scientist. We built him a place on the property. So I've got a really solid group here. We're all as prepared as we can be, both financially, physically, mentally, spiritually. I think we're in a good place to probably ride out something. But anyway, let's see. We got, let's see who else is on here. Brian Schuler is on from North Texas. Thank you so much for watching. So back to, this was kind of the point system. So you will remember, we mentioned it on here multiple times, the extreme MAGA Republican speech that Biden gave September of 2022, now 3 years ago. That was worthy of 2 points. If the 45th or 46th president were to be indicted, and of course he was with 91, it then became 93 felony charges in 4 different jurisdictions. So I gave that was worthy of 2 points.
And to be clear, you have not changed this grading rubric. You're just, the only thing that's changed since then is the number of points that you've assigned. And you say you have not updated this in a year.
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
So there's a whole lot of stuff on it. You see national ID card with party affiliation. These are things that are just kind of right off of the genocide playbook. There's 8 stages of genocide. That would be one of them that has been identified. So, just like my ID card, first they wanted you to get the star on it. It's going to make it easy for you to travel. And then it's like, oh, you're a veteran. You got to get veteran put on your thing. So, okay, I went down there and got the veteran thing. What's next? So they kind of keep slow creeping that. Federal firearms registration, Trump is in office now, so maybe that won't go down. Maybe it will. If president were to be given a gag order, because I'm like, okay, he's got all these indictments. What if they say he can't speak? And this is a man running for office. Well, that did happen. They gave him 2 different gag orders, but they were extremely narrow, which didn't stop him from actually running, his campaign, Dr. Fuller.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't give it the full 3 points, but I thought, okay, well, it's worthy of something, I added this afterward. It's was not
worthy when the courts tell a former president to shut up.
Bingo.
That's something worthy of at least discussion.
That is exactly right. I did add this one after the fact. So in fairness, I did put in there that I added this. I thought when former Secretary Clinton said that Trump supporters should be formally deprogrammed, I found that freaking chilling, man.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people hear these things and it's kind of a one-off and they go back. I'm like, you got to take these people at their word, man. What are you talking about, formal deprogramming? I'm sure your staffers thought that phraseology out extremely well before you just parsed it out when talking to whomever.
You hope so. But, we've talked about it on here before. You go back and you want to know what's going to happen in 1940, 41, 42 in Germany, read Mein Kampf. Read it. It's, I grant you, it's a little weird standing in line at Barnes and Noble, have that book under your arm and buying it. Get some looks, but read the book, and he tells you exactly what he's going to do. He lays it out. So that's just a very, very extreme example of taking people at their word, right? You have no choice. You have to take their word. When she came out and called everyone deplorables because they didn't vote for her and they voted for the other guy, that to me said, I don't care about that half of the demographic. I'm not trying to be a president for everyone. I'm trying to be a president for these people that are going to vote for me, because I know those people aren't going to vote for me. So the hell with them. They're deplorable. That was bad enough. But then when she came out and said that, to me, it was like, well, what was this, a hold my beer moment? That was bad. Hold my beer. I got something worse.
The lady running for governor of California recently said something like that too. Did you hear that?
No, I missed that.
Yeah, they shut that one down pretty quick. But basically, what somebody asked her was, well, what about the 48% of the California electorate that are Republicans? So she's like, what about them? Well, don't you want to try to win over? Why would I try to win them over? And it was just like, she was just like, I don't even understand that logic. I got enough to win. All I need to be is who the Democrats put forward, and I'm in. I don't give a shit about them.
Right.
So you might as well call them deplorable because I'm not reaching out to them at all. I don't care about them. They're freaking irrelevant. Like, well, you're talking about millions and millions and millions of Americans that have children, that have lives, that have dreams and hopes. And you're just like, why not give a shit about them? I got enough to win.
You've in essence disenfranchised them. You've told them, I'm not going to be your representative. I'm not going to speak for your issues. I'm going to speak for the issues of my people. And that is not how you maintain. Yeah, it's not how you maintain a unified society. It's just not.
Which leads us back to the breakup that I worry we may be, heading toward. So I'll just kind of go quickly through some of these federal firearms confiscation or buyback, because a mandatory buyback is confiscation. You can call it whatever you want, but if you say, I'm offering you a mandatory buyback under the coercive power of the government, and it's, all the implements of that. So yeah, I know I'm going to give you fair market value, but if you don't turn it in, I'm going to send you to prison. Oh, okay, well, call it what you will. Gold confiscation is another one, Dr. Fuller. When they start taking fiat currency, will be what it is. But if you're trying to start hoarding gold, and we saw that here, FDR, people forget, if you don't turn in all your gold, I'm going to allow you to keep one. You might have a special family gold, $20 gold piece. I'm going to let you keep that. However, if you don't turn everything else in gold, I'm going to treat you as use the Alien Sedition Act. I can't remember which act he was going to use, but
yeah, it was something like that. But to your point, people forget that happened here. That happened. The president of the United States used the coercive power, the monopoly on force that the federal government has, to make you give up your property. Everyone. And if you didn't, you're a criminal.
And there was one gentleman who because somebody has to be that poor guy, right? And I want to say there was a bank manager that knew this guy had in excess of X number of coins in his safety deposit box, and they turned him in because they were, the banks, just like they are today, they might as well work for the federal government because they have to. There are all these things that, as a bank that has FDIC, you got to comply with. So they turned him in, and the guy got 10 years. Now, what he ended up serving, I have no idea. But just the fact that they would treat him as a enemy of the state because he tried to maintain custody over the things that were rightfully his. I mean, it's just gross.
Yeah, and we've mentioned this on the show multiple times. There's always that guy. There are always people that will inform on the others. There are always people that will, well, it's the law. I got to go put bracelets on you. So when I hear people say, well, I would never have put people on that train to Auschwitz or Treblinka, I look very, very askance at that, because there are always people that will do that. Look at COVID. As soon as they said, well, if you don't get the jab, you're in for it. And people were flocking to rat one another out. There's always those people. So you really got to factor that into your decision-making matrix as well.
All the liberal late night comedians just had made hay with that. Like, why should they go to the hospital? They didn't take the jab. Screw them. I'm like, what? There's nothing funny about that. And everybody laughs and claps. I'm like, am I living in some bizarro Orwellian dystopia? I mean, that was 5 years ago. Are we in a better place than we were 5 years ago? Maybe in some regards. I mean,
well, I worry that all those decisions now will be made by people from a political perspective. Well, Rich didn't get the jab, but he's one of my tribe, so I'm not going to rat him out. But oh wait, Rich voted for that other guy, so I'm definitely going to rat him out.
This gentleman here says the problem with these liberals is that they're incapable of sound reasoning. It's almost like their consciousness has been seared. Yeah, it's almost cult-like behavior at this point. Michael Gentili says, you just described someone running for office to gain power, not represent the electorate. True. Don says, not only did FDR confiscate the gold, he also offered a bounty for turning in someone that you knew was holding some. Now, I did not know that, but it does not surprise me. So moving on with this, gold confiscation, we talked about that. Implementation of a digital currency. When that comes to pass, and there are talks of, the Russians have talked a lot about the fact that the U.S. holds X number amount of Bitcoin, and at some point they may replace it. To me, it's over, man. When we have a centralized digital currency, it's over, because they're going to tell you, you're going to go to scan your card. And I know, Rich, you're talking crazy talk, but just hear me out, because it comes with a suite of other things. And some of it sounds good. We see Chinese doing this with their social credit scores and all this kind of stuff, right? So it's not far-fetched to say this could happen. And it's like, no, I try to scan it to get my, QP with chi at McDonald's, my quarter pounder with fries. Like, we've already had your fat allocation, Rich. We know that what you had for breakfast, like, you can't buy it. Or you've had your liquor ration for the week. You can't have anymore, like, oh man. You can't buy ammo anymore, or you've already bought your 50 rounds for the month. I mean, Guile from the Philippines is on here, and he'll tell you, I'm pretty sure their government limits the amount of ammunition you can have at home. So I'm not talking out of my rear end here. This could and would happen.
Yeah, I mean, just anybody who has an EBT card right now, ask them how they feel about the government controlling their money.
Bingo.
So you got 536 people up on Capitol Hill playing poker with your lives as the chips. And hey, you know what? How about you go hungry for a while? You and, whatever other crazy number of those 20, 30, 40 million people that are on EBT, you can all go hungry while we wrestle and try to win this argument.
A government that can feed you can starve you. Don't ever forget that. And that's a lesson.
Memory. I mean, you and I are old enough to remember when the Chinese were having their famine issues when we were kids.
Yeah.
The Russians have had those problems when they were a Soviet. So, this concept that, well, the government can do it better, you're just crazy. You just lost your mind, or you're not reading a book.
Well, and that's the thing. And yet they just elected Mamdani. And it's like, guys, what in the hell? Am I taking crazy pills? What do they say? Those who, history's doomed to repeat, but those that do know history are doomed to watch other people repeat it. Yeah. That's exactly kind of where we are. Like, what in the hell are you doing?
Well, he said all the right things, right? He's young. He's fired up. He got out there and said, you get this for free and you get that for free. And that's all people are hearing. They're not hearing consequence. They're not thinking long term. They're just thinking, ooh, free. Ooh, free. Well, there's no such thing as free, folks. You're just somebody else is paying for it. And maybe your thought is, well, I'm not paying for it, so it's free to me. Okay. You can be that short-sighted. But I think New York is in for a pretty rough ride.
Yeah, and Jim says, what about forcing it to a non-cash economy? That's exactly what I'm talking about, sir. Absolutely, yeah. And Jim also says how soon New York forgot, and they most certainly did. Not only a Muslim. My brother brought up an interesting point. They were asking Cuomo and the red beret gentleman who was the Republican running.
Curtis Solo.
Okay, yeah, that gentleman. They were asking them, are you going to march in the parades? And they were all like, I love parades. Yeah, I'll be out there forever parade, gay pride parade. I'm your guy. I'll be the grand marshal, the grand poobah, whatever. I'll put on some beads and walk with everybody. And Mamdani's like, no, there's certain parades I won't be a part of. But yet we have gays for Mamdani. I'm like, this guy's, he's a Muslim, man. That ain't part of the program.
I would not have had on my bingo card that New York City 20 years later would elect a Muslim to be the mayor. I mean,
not a chance.
Go back and look at the videos of the people jumping out of those towers, leaping out of those towers. And here we are 20 years later, 25 years later, keys to the kingdom.
It's mind-blowing, right? And Gentili says so much of the electorate is seduced by promises of someone running for office that can fix their life's choices. Yeah, in the book Eric Hoffer wrote, the True Believer, that Gentili bought me for one of my birthdays, he makes it clear, they were asking some Nazis, what was it about Hitler? He says, well, he freed us. Freed you from what? Freedom. He freed us from choice. You just do what the strong man says, and my life just gets better.
And there are people that will do that. And there have always been people that will do that. And there will people that will continue to do that.
Yeah.
Look, you just sit back and play your Xbox, and we'll get you your food, and we'll take care of your kid. We'll educate your children. We'll tell you what shots to get, and we'll give them to you for free. And there are people that are just like, cool. And it's not us. It's not tends not to be your viewership on this show either.
And that speaks to what this gentleman says, that most of the voters weren't born until after 9/11. So they don't have that visceral reaction to that thing like we all did that were watching on TV or had family and friends in the area, or God forbid it was lost. And I had on Simon Golub, who's a friend of yours as well. And, he was with the MIPD, and he talks about, being off that day and running into the thing as they were imploding. And so for those of us that were in a profession and of an age, we recall it, and I thought it would never happen. And yet it happened in 20 something years. So it's just unimaginable. Moving back to the point system here. This was another one, Dr. Fuller. I said the 45th or even perhaps the 46th president. I think I said jailed. I had to go back and say sentenced, because the sentencing is one thing. I'm like, and so that's why I gave it 3 points, because Donald Trump was sentenced. 2025 election and executive orders.
Backing up a second, 46, it would have been, under any other circumstances, would have been indicted. But as they said, he was just too old and doddering to go through a trial.
But he can be the chief executive of the country.
He can launch nuclear weapons, but can't, assist in his own defense.
I know. That's crazy. So we got unknown executive orders. I didn't know what was going to happen and who was going to get elected in 2025, because I put this together in 2023, but I knew the election was coming. I didn't know who might get elected or what executive orders, might come to pass. So I gave that nothing. Black swan events, unknowns, mandatory jabs, mask scan, etc. Then some things did kind of come to pass. The border crisis, Texas failing to comply with SCOTUS and POTUS, I thought was pretty extraordinary. Speaker McCarthy was ousted. Israel's invasion by Hamas, Iran-backed groups attacking shipping. It just kind of got wonky. And then, of course, we smacked Iran for the first time. That was pretty wild. Then I put the 45th president, if they try to disqualify him from a state ballot, I would award 2 points. Well, that did come to pass, and I did award the 2 points because Illinois, Maine, and Colorado did their damn level best to keep him off the ballot so that their citizens could not vote for this person to be their president, which is crazy. Then I put down here the 45th or 46th, or even the Speaker of the House or a member of SCOTUS, if they were assassinated, 6 points. And of course, but for a half an inch, that would have happened. So I gave it the full value of 6, especially since it tried to happen twice. And then there's some things that would be a full 10 points, and that's what's there in red. I don't know that it's worthy of even talking about, but I thought if the suspension of habeas corpus again, or internment of an entire class of American citizens, would be a full 10 points right out of the gate. Suspension of the First or Second Amendment by any executive would be, out of here. Bank accounts of U.S. citizens frozen due to a party affiliation would be time to go, So those were 10-point red lines. Any questions on that, Dr. Fuller?
No, I think it's important that we do discuss those last three, because it does show that you're not just looking at relatively lower levels, lower hanging fruit, but that you're actually considering the possibility that habeas corpus might be suspended, which to me illustrates where your mind is. That was unthinkable 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That could even be a topic of conversation. There's just no way that would happen. Now it's worthy of considered thought.
Well, and Lincoln has suspended habeas corpus. And of course, before that, as you pointed out to me, I was unaware of it. Andrew Jackson had told SCOTUS to kiss his ass at some point.
That's the enforcement. And when you've got a former Secretary of State, former United States Senator, former, candidate for presidency from the Democratic Party saying, well, we might have to forcibly deprogram these people. Is the suspension of habeas corpus really that hard to picture?
No.
It's part and parcel of, you're going to come out here and grab someone up because of there's an R or a D on their voter registration card. There's a whole lot of laws you got to violate to do that.
Yeah, and I tell you, I've mentioned this on the show so many times, but for those 13 folks watching, if you haven't heard, look at John Breckinridge. You know, if you want to kind of understand what was going on then, study John Breckinridge, who's the vice president under James Buchanan. And of course, Buchanan had been the Secretary of State under Polk. So he'd been a politician for a long time. When the southern states started seceding, Buchanan didn't do a damn thing. And they just continued to fly out. But because I think a truism would be that the southern states would have never ratified the Constitution if they didn't think they could get out of it anytime they wanted to. And they were pretty clear about that. So when they tried to exit, no, you're not. Under force of arms, you're not going. And then, so Breckinridge, who was an attorney, obviously, and former vice president, says, wait a minute, Lincoln doesn't have the power to do what he's doing. I'm just going to make it as quick as I can. But he became a senator from Kentucky in order to kind of stay in what's going on. He didn't go flee. And when he went back to Kentucky, they had just arrested the governor of Kentucky because everybody's afraid Kentucky might secede next. So Lincoln said, grab him. And then they told Breckinridge, you're next. It's like, I haven't done anything. What am I coming for? And of course, Breckinridge went and fought he enlisted as a private in the Confederacy. Former Vice President of the United States, former U.S. Attorney General of the United States of America. Because he's like, he's exceeded his authority. Well, that's why it is on my thing as an automatic 10 points. I'm not going through this shit again. I say there's nothing good coming out of it when a president can just, Dr. Fuller, yeah, I'm going to hold you for the duration of the war. What the hell did I do? Which again, FDR interned an entire race of Americans. Did he not, Dr. Fuller?
He did. And oh, by the way, the Supreme Court said it was okay.
So and decision.
You mentioned Mondami earlier. He's already said, look, I'm not going to cooperate with ICE. We're not going to allow them to operate in New York City when I'm mayor. And what did Trump say when you see that yesterday? He said, well, then we'll arrest him too. So I'm like, guys, come on. How about we get some grown-ups in here? And look, I'm not just plastering one side with this. Both sides could walk us back off this edge. They really could.
Yeah.
But neither side wants to. And each side has adopted their platform and their moral superiority. And the people that adhere to their particular political leanings are digging in with them. My guy says this, so that's what I believe. And it seems like so many people have just abdicated their responsibility to conduct sober thought and to come up with your own opinions based on your own experiences, knowledge, training, schooling, and figure it out. Instead, we're just, well, that's the soundbite from my guy, so that's what I'm regurgitating. How about this? How about the mayor cooperates with the feds and talks to the president behind the scenes and the governor behind the scenes, say, yeah, let's work something out. And the president of the United States says, you know what? Obviously, I need to sit down and talk to this guy and the governor up there because, this has got to get done and he has a different perspective. Let's sit down and talk. Not just like, no, screw you. No, screw you, man. I'm going that. Come on.
Mondani is not going to ever agree to let ICE operate, freely within the confines of New York City. That's my opinion. You can have all the conversations you want. This guy's not doing it. But
here's the thing. You in those positions are obligated to have the conversations. You may go into it thinking there's no way this guy's coming off of his position. But not for nothing, Trump's a New Yorker and he's a deal maker.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah, maybe Mondami doesn't, but maybe Trump comes up with a way where Mondami can declare victory and still acquiesce. That's what these guys are supposed to do.
It's funny you say what these guys are supposed to do. Every historian they will laud. I don't think there's a single historian that doesn't place Lincoln as the number one president, or maybe Lincoln's number two and Washington's number one on a few different polls. But it stupefies me because I tell you what would happen right now if Lincoln was president. He'd be snatching these mayors up that are not complying. Governors, you comply or your ass is going to be arrested and held, go before a military tribunal. As you'll see later in today's show, the name of this show is in honor of Looney McDaniel, There are no monuments to Looney McDaniel. There's no photograph of Looney McDaniel. And I will acquaint you with him briefly this morning. We'll talk about him again on Monday's show for the 15 folks watching live. I'll give you a little bit more. I'm going to tease Looney McDaniel for you. Looney McDaniel, well, I don't want to get into it just yet. We're going to get into why he is important to this unknown American here in a moment. But let's take a look, Dr. Fuller, if we could, what I said I would do, which of course I did not because I'm still here in Tennessee. If that red line was crossed, and as you can see, we blew way past it, it was 17 points and at least at this point. If it, according to my plan from over 2 years ago, at 10 points, I would automatically initiate a 30-day countdown. I would go on to wire only. A lot of people are using Signal. Most of the U.S. government uses Signal, which is insane because Signal is not as secure as you think. Look who owns Signal. You know, you're freaking nuts if you're using Signal, in my opinion. And yet every G-man I know and cool guy I know is using Signal, which is bananas. Wire only. Wire is sitting on Swiss servers. They can tell the U.S. government to kiss their ass, which they've done a million times. End-to-end encryption, blah, blah, blah. But you need to use some sort of secure messaging app. And I would use probably Wire. Everything would be VPN, Google Voice. I would get an unlocked dual SIM burner phone for me and all my folks. All the current phones and apps are destroyed, gone. Notify family, hey, we're going on a vacation. Yay. That's all the extended family needs to know. Some valuables would be cached. If you want to think about that. Notify the accountant, the bank. I would assign a power of attorney as necessary to handle some things back here. Shutter my LLCs. That all be closed. My PO boxes will be stopped. The vehicles will be sold to increase liquidity and reduce my footprint over here, so I don't have to worry about putting things on a trickle charger and stuff like that. I'll get an international health insurance plan. There's some really good ones out there. World Nomad, Travel X. But even in some friendly countries, I could use TRICARE, which is what I'm on, TRICARE for life as a retired military guy. I would sign a contract with a professional house sitter. Mindmyhouse.com is a really reputable one. They have long-term folks who are like, they're in a grad school program and they move from one house to another as they work on their degree online or whatever. And these are professional nomads, basically, that house sit as a way to have a free place to stay. Cancel all subscriptions and create a new one, which is USA2me.com, which is a mail forwarding services overseas. That's a pretty cool one. It's got price plans that are pretty reasonable. Airfare and lodging would be arranged. Of course, don't forget your pets. You know, my pets are part of our family here, so there's a pet relocation services. Not cheap. It's like $2,000 or $3,000 per pet to get them anything and everything they need to make the transfer. Now you can do it yourself. I'm just saying, if you have the means to hire that out to be done, taken care of on your own, so they meet you over there, then you can use that. Junk bags, passports, a new laptop, new phone, wallet, cash, jewelry, precious metals, vital docs, credit cards, no foreign. We have one credit card that has no foreign exchange fees on it for this reason, and it has, I think, $25,000 or $50,000 to go. Phone numbers, banking information, medication, prescriptions, thumb drive. The time to digitize all your shit is now. Dr. Fuller, you've been in my kitchen my dining room where I'm sitting right now, and you know I've got 5 antique trunks filled with old family photos for the last 150 years. For whatever reason, I am now the keeper of all those kind of things. Well, I paid to have every damn one of them digitized. And for Christmas last year, every family member got a thumb drive with every photo.
Nice.
That the Brown family and our extended family, every damn one of them. So if this house burns down, it doesn't matter. I have that. And it also means that I can jump with it, right? And recreate those. Universal adapters, etc. So that would be all in the kind of jump bag. And anyway, any questions about that?
No, sir. I think some of this you should absolutely put up on the AWS site as a guide for others who might want to recreate all or some of your plan.
Yeah, I probably should do that. Pat Cahill is on from northern Wisconsin. Our good friend Will Parker, coin number 800 out there, Montana. Yeah, Beautiful sister-in-law. So it's good morning, Rich, my favorite brother-in-law. Jim says, I have to bounce. Great show. I have to listen to the replay later. Thanks, TC and Rich. Well, thank you for being on, sir. Yeah, I mean, like you said, the time to think through it is now. But I'm going to tell you, when things start sliding, they slide really fast. And that's going to lead us into the second part of the show, Dr. Fuller. So let's take a look at this. This is the newspaper here in Knoxville, November the 20th, 1861. Tennessee had left the Union in June. So here we are 5 months later, probably less than 5 months, pretty close to 5 months. And here's what the Knoxville Register is saying. The deep laden schemes to destroy all railroads in East Tennessee on Friday night last by an organized Lincolnite traitors extending from Bristol to the Georgia line resulted in the burning of the following bridges: the bridge over Hiawassee River at Charleston on the East Tennessee and Georgia Railroad, the bridge over Lick Creek, the bridge over the Holston River, 2 small bridges on Chickamauga Creek. The telegraph wires were cut at various places between Knoxville and Chattanooga. No attempt seems to have been made upon the bridge at Loudon, that being well guarded by a cavalry company. The attempt to burn the bridge at Strawberry Plains was unsuccessful, and its preservation is due to the courageous conduct of the watchmen. Now, again, 5 months earlier, Tennessee was a part of the Union. Had a governor who's, there was nothing was on the radar that this was coming to pass. Some states had gone, but Tennessee had been like, yeah, we're not going. Thank you, though. Glad that's the decision y'all made. We're not making that. And here we are 5 months later, and this group of Lincolnites, these guerrillas behind the Confederate lines, are blowing up bridges. Now, the one over Lick Creek is one that my great-great-grandfather was responsible for, Looney McDaniel. That same article goes on to say, and this Looney, the word, it was actually Lewis, but because there was so many Lewises in the McDaniel family, that if you're another one, you kind of get Looney. But that Looney goes all the way back to as far back as I can find in the early 1700s when they came over from Northern Ireland. That was a family name, Looney. But 6 of the incendiaries who burnt the bridge over Lick Creek and who were captured by Captain McLenn's cavalry were brought to Knoxville on a special train yesterday afternoon. The names of the 5 men are Looney McDaniel, something Hahn, 3 brothers Harmon. They were marched bound through the streets, followed by a large crowd to the city jail to await an examination before the Confederate States Commissioner, which will probably take place today. McDaniel is one of the Lincolnites who was arrested and brought before the Confederate court in September last, and who, after being released, voluntarily took the oath of support. So 2 months earlier, he had been arrested in September, and he took an oath of Confederacy. Yeah, whatever he was doing that they thought was the Confederates found subversive, he swore to God he would never do it again. And then here he is burning a freaking bridge. So this is... Let's talk about who this guy was. This right here is a record where he got married on the 8th of March, 1852 to his bride, Orlenia Copeland. And they had 2 children, Margaret, who was my great-great-great-grandmother, and then his wife died in childbirth trying to deliver their second child. So Margaret is his only surviving child. And so this is another thing that makes Looney incredibly dangerous. He's lost his wife. He's lost his second child in childbirth a few years before, 4 years before. He's got nothing to lose, man. Nothing. And guess what? When this kind of shit happens, Dr. Fuller, there's going to be a lot of other young men that got nothing to lose. They've been told for years that they're toxically masculine. The society's tried to feminize them. There's been no place for a straight white male on the Democratic ticket. No place for you. Matter of fact, you're the enemy. You're evil. And then when things go south, you have somebody who, I don't want to say can be radicalized, but obviously Looney was, right?
It seems to be. I find it interesting that he died on the Marine Corps birthday.
I know, right? And I wonder how they know that, because his body was never recovered.
I'm sure someone wrote it down in a paper that there was an execution on this day.
Exactly.
I'm assuming he was hung for his
I
I
will
should-
talk about that more on Monday.
Okay.
But what we do know is that he did help burn the bridge there, November of 1861, to slow the Confederate forces, because Lincoln had sent some undercover operatives into East Tennessee, and they rounded up some folks. I don't know why Looney was chosen, how they picked him out of the crowd, but from what I have read, he met in Harriman in Roane County, just down the road, with these guys, and I think they were given like $25,000, which at the time is a staggering amount of money. I mean, I can't even imagine what it would be today, millions, to try to raise these troops, these spies behind the lines, and get these bridges burned, because Lincoln had promised he would come in and rescue East Tennessee. East Tennessee didn't really have slaves. We have rocky soil. It's not the Mississippi Delta where you can plant all the cotton you want. It's subsistence farming on the hills and hollers. So slavery wasn't an issue. So they were Republicans and always have been, still are to this day. But family lore on my side of the family says he had to dress to disguise himself as a woman to carry out his part of the plot, and he was carrying about $1,000 in gold pieces to pay people off, which is, again, a crazy amount of money, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Good Lord.
I know, man. So I just mentioned that, he was arrested, taken to Knoxville jail with Parson Brownlow, who was the editor of the Whig magazine. They scooped him up as well. He was a local preacher who was also the editor of this paper, who was friendly to the Union. He was arrested. Surviving daughter, Margaret, as I mentioned, my great-great-grandmother, told her children years later that some men had came to get her father one night, and he never came back. He was later, we assume, after Knoxville, sent to Tuscaloosa, Alabama prison camp, where he was, his father didn't even know whatever happened to him, although he was reported dead on November the 10th. Parson Brownlow got lucky. After the Civil War, him and other radical Republicans utilized their control of the state government to re-enfranchise male African Americans, former slaves, give them the right to vote, run for public office in Tennessee, and extend civil rights to all former slaves. So that was one of the guys he was in a Civil War camp with who survived. And why was he rounded up? Because of his Republican beliefs, and because he was the editor of a Republican-friendly magazine in Knoxville. So again, I guess my point is, most Americans have historical amnesia. They've forgotten that this shit can happen here.
And has.
That's my point. It has happened here.
Well, now, given all this as a background, and given what you told us about your original plan 2 years ago, what has changed, and how has your plan modified? Because obviously we're long past that point where your original plan would have you in Scotland or Ireland or Tbilisi or wherever you were going to land, but you're not there. So obviously the plan has changed. Mm-hmm. What specific triggers changed it, and what is the plan now?
Excellent question. So I'll take the first ones first. Obviously what's changed is the birth of our granddaughter. I don't really want to take flight with her. There's another set of grandparents and some other things that kind of complicate that. My father's health, he needs, not round the clock care, but he does need care. And that's basically it. I mean, and the other thing that at the time I didn't know Trump was going to get elected, but it was looking like that. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see how this plays out.
So has that helped modify your position? Just the fact that Trump's in office versus somebody from the other side of the aisle?
Yeah, oh my God, I think so. Yeah, I mean, if it was looking like Harris was going to win in a landslide, it might be like, yeah, we're taking the granddaughter with us, or Dad, you're going to have to go in a nursing home, right? But yeah, Jeff says $25,000 in 1861 would have been $975,000 today, so basically $1 million. Gave them $1 million to get this accomplished, and they got all the bridges but one. So they did a fantastic job, and the one that Looney was involved with, he was able to get it knocked out. So again, how was he rewarded for this? Lincoln didn't come down. I'll give you the rest of the story. He had other priorities and was getting his ass handed to him, and he couldn't afford it, and he didn't come, and these guys were left out to dry, and they all died. They were all rounded up and executed. And this happened here. And had it not been for his one and only surviving daughter, it may not be here today. You see what I'm saying? So people, please read read your history, man. These are intimate, and that's why I showed that one picture. The only thing I have of him is where he signed to get married on a beautiful day in 1852, and he had his whole life ahead of him. He's a young man. He's getting married, and he's excited. I try to think about it. And he has his little daughter, Margaret, and then his wife and child die in childbirth. And he's like, all right. And as that country slid that way, he was a man of action, I would presume. And said, hey, yeah.
Slid right along with him.
Yeah, let's get it on. Which is where, coming back to your second part of your question is, so that changed the calculus. What am I doing now? What I'm doing now, we're training together weekly in firearms, right? Really aggressively training, not just plinking. I'm talking about training, running, anything and everything you can imagine on the range. We have a very, very good range.
And when you say we, who are we including in this we?
They're all the males in and around my family, and then some others that have joined in on our Thursday morning range sesh. We do 2 hours of pretty intense training. We dry fire things to do during the week. We are lifting. Everybody's working out, getting fit, getting in shape. Stores of supplies are on hand. And then we have a weekly fight club where we do ground grappling and things of this nature. And so that's kind of what we're doing now. And again, hey, look, let's be honest. The likelihood of this to come to pass is somewhere around zero, So I don't, but let's say I'm staving off cardiovascular disease, Dr. Fuller.
Which statistically is much more likely to kill you than any of this other stuff. Let's be honest.
Exactly. So, I mean, at the end of the day,
right? You're spending time with people that are close to you, right? I mean, time is fleeting, so you get to spend this time on what amounts to a common hobby. If you want to look at it if you want to squint and turn your head a little bit. So there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I know most of these people. I've met them. I've been to your home. This is not an armed camp. This is not a bunch of people running from cover to cover as they go to check the mail and dressed up like a 511 catalog exploded on them. I mean,
I'm wearing cashmere, Dr. Fuller.
And you're making it look good. I'm just going to put that out there. All right. But you know what I'm saying? A lot of people seem to think that if you go down that lifestyle choice, that suddenly your house is surrounded by barbed wire and sandbags, and you've got primary, secondary, and tertiary fighting positions dug in all over the place. That's simply not the case for you that I know.
No, of course not. And I think I read about like other people that have been in similar situations in other countries, whether that's going back to our time in the Civil War or even more recently, whether it's farmers that live out in the hinterlands in South Africa and how they organize their communities and prepare themselves for the event if it comes, a farm attack or Rhodesia or Bosnia, as we talked about. So I think there's a lot of lessons, and now's the time to learn them. Now's the time to read and study. Now's the time to prepare yourself physically and mentally. Get your friend group together, people that are like-minded and want to train. And I think I have a very reasoned approach to, something that may never come to pass. But if it doesn't, what's the harm in being more physically fit? What's the harm in shooting and training and developing a skill? What's the harm in having your pantries full of amazing food that you're going to enjoy with your, loved ones? I mean, what's the harm in going to church with your kith and kin? I mean, I don't see any negative downside because, like you said, none of us are paranoid. We're just prepared.
Yeah. And look, those preparations are multi-use, right? I don't say, oh, I'm preparing for an economic collapse, or I'm preparing for a civil war. I just simply say I'm preparing for the 13th Mongolian one-hump camel brigade, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be ready in case something goes wonky, a weather event, a power outage that lasts for a few days. Well, I don't want to go hungry. So when we've had things like that happen around here, they're very low key for the most part. It's largely a non-event in our house because we do have the stuff that we need, and everybody's kind of has the right mindset, and we just sort of putter through it. And I think it's kind of where you're landing. And I would say that's the only really long-term sustainable approach to take if you're going to adopt this sort of perspective. And as far as it goes to your grading scale and your decision-making matrix, I think it's important to note that it has to be a living document. Right? It has to be modifiable as time goes on, because your circumstance will change. And when I say you, I don't just mean you're Richard Brown. I mean anybody that watches this show or listens to the show later. Your circumstances are fluid, and things will change, not just at the government level, but within your own family. I mean, like you said, 2 years ago, the idea of going overseas for an extended period of time and leaving your dad behind was not a deal killer. Now,
Right.
There's additional burden attached with caring for your father that perhaps you're not willing to leave behind and trust others to do, which modifies not just your personal plan, but the plan for everybody around you. So I think that's important. And, maybe 10 years from now, he's less of a consideration. And, then you make, and your granddaughter's older and, decisions can be made. But then at that point, you're older.
Right. Exactly.
So these things all change.
Yeah. And that's part of it too, is like, if something terrible like this, a fracturing or a balkanization, let's, on some level, it's like, hey man, if it's going to happen, which I pray to God it does not, I don't want it to happen, because it would be bad on every single level. There's not one good thing that would come out of it. However, if these politicians are not going to do their job and find a compromise and build an off ramp and get this damn government running again, then if we're really sliding into that, let's do it. I mean, I don't want to be 70 and go through this shit. I mean, I'm in a position now where, I think I can help my family. And there's so many ugly things that'll come out of the fracturing. I mean, I've talked about them ad nauseum on the show, but one little example, as a amateur genealogist, I used to have to go to some of these small towns where I knew my family members had lived, and I would go talk to the librarian. Do you have historical records? Oh yeah. And sometimes it would be like, we have the digitized newspapers, right? So I'd say, okay, well, I had an ancestor die around this date. So I'd kind of go in there and look at the old newspapers that have been digitized and on the old microfiche and stuff like that. And I would read the craziest stories. One of them was, so the Civil War is over, and there's this guy, I don't think he was related to us, John Brown, and he had been sleeping with a lot of guys that were deployed's wives during the Civil War.
Well, so he's an MP, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So guess what happens when these guys come back to Kingston, Tennessee?
They take umbrage.
Yeah, there was, I think, only from that local unit, there was only 2 men that survived, and I don't even think he had been screwing their wives. But he came back. They came back into town. There's a newspaper reported it. He was hanging out at a saloon. They called his ass out in the street, and both of them shot him dead. Now it's like, and the newspaper said, we've tried, we've interviewed everybody, and nobody says I don't know who they were that shot him. Yeah, right. They're not going to tell on it. But these are the kind of like score settlings. We saw it in Iraq, Afghanistan, the fall, Saigon. I don't give a crap where it is. When the government falls like that, guess what's going to happen? Score settling.
Well, and a vacuum is created, right? Mm-hmm. We settle in our societies and we elect it. In this country, at least, we have representative democracy. We have people that do things for us, and the contract is you do these things, and I'll behave myself, and I will abide by your rules, and I will live peacefully in this society. Well, if you stop doing those things, you've abdicated that responsibility. Some of these things still need to take place, and maybe they're not going to take place in a different way now. And instead of me being very upset that you were sleeping with my now dead buddy's wife, I'm just going to shoot you in the face. Absolutely. Because there's no one here to stop me. No one says I can't. The rules of society don't apply anymore because the people that were charged with enforcing those rules aren't here. It's not a difficult, drawing to sketch out. It really isn't. And to your point, it happens every single time there's a conflict that stops. So.
Yeah, Michael Gitelli says, I remember a meme from many years ago. In the event of an insurrection, one side has 8 billion bullets, the other side can't decide which toilet to use. Yeah, but that it's sadly enough because these people are so unreasonable. I think that they will charge headlong into that, not realizing the mess that comes up because the left, anytime, I mean, they ultimately get destroyed. Let's be honest. Historically, they will definitely get you into a civil conflict for which they have no means to succeed because of the same things that Michael enumerated. And you can go back to the Finnish Civil War or basically anything. The left ultimately, because the right has the instruments of power, they have or have had the monopoly on force, and they would just destroy these people. But they're going to tear us apart in doing so. And Jeff made an interesting comment. Says, "I don't think we can vote our way out of where the country is heading," which is why. And this is another interesting thing about America. But when we were more homogenous, it really didn't matter, and that is somebody in Portland, Oregon, and Miami are different places. I mean, they are culturally different. They are different in every way. The food is different. The weather is different. The culture is different. The demographics are different. Everything is different. The ethnography is different. And yet somehow we've held it together for 249 years. I think now I don't know that that is sustainable at this point. And maybe it's just my lack of imagination, or I can't think abstract anymore. I don't know what the problem is, Dr. Fuller, but I just don't see it being sustainable over the course of the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, for the most part of our history, that person in Portland didn't have a whole lot of ability to influence the person in Miami. Just
good point.
Didn't have the ability, didn't have a bully pulpit that they could get on, like, I don't know, a podcast and talk and have an influence on people from Canada to Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
That has changed, which, by the way, makes a really nice on-road for nation-state actors in other countries to jump in there and have influence. I don't think with the current crop of what passes for political leaders that we're going to be able to get off of this road. We need people, and it's weird to say this, but we need people that are more towards the center, like Bill Maher, for God's sake.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for how long has he been on the far left? And now all of a sudden the far left has gone so far left that it's left him in the center.
Yeah.
We need more people in the center to get in there and say, look, I see some points on the left. I see some points on the right. But let's find some common ground. Instead of dwelling on our differences, let's dwell on our similarities. Let's dwell on our commonalities and build from there, instead of pointing out our perceived deficiencies from our opponents and then rip the place apart based on that. I think to your point, your brother's point, if we stay on our current path with these same people in charge, that's what's going to happen, because the right is getting further to the right and the left is getting further to the left. And nobody seems interested, in your words, in finding an off-ramp. Everybody's just heading pell-mell off onto their extremes, and they're pandering to their extremist fringe voters. Mm-hmm. And in the process, they're leaving a whole bunch of us behind.
But all you need is that fringe. That's another thing that I think people forget about. There's been talk of 3% and all this kind of stuff. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's actually small. The Nazis were incredibly small, right? Mm-hmm. And there are 1 billion Muslims in the world, and most of them are amazing people that care about their families and want to do right, want to do well. But there's that poison 5 to 10% that are completely radical and will never. And a lot of them are in New York City, and a lot of them voted for Mondani. And to them, they're celebrating in the streets. So really, I mean, you could go watch the videos. It's not my opinion. It's out there.
And the metaphor we've used on the show before is, if I give you a bowl full of M&Ms, right? And you say there's 1,000 M&Ms in there, and I say, look, 5 of them have arsenic in them.
It will kill you dead on the spot. Yeah.
How many of those M&Ms are you going to eat?
How many do you allow your children to eat?
Yeah.
Because I think that's what people are missing. Like, this is the future. This is Margaret McDaniel future, and I'm here in her stead. That's why this is in honor of her father, who gave the last full measure for his country, and the McDaniels had fought for the revolution, and that's why they ended up in Tennessee on a land grant. So they had fought for this country and started this country, and yet they didn't want to see it torn apart, and he gave his life for it. And again, there's no statues for this guy. His name isn't recorded anywhere. You got to really search to read old records of him. And again, his body was thrown in a pit, probably in Alabama, and forgotten about.
Well, but there's a big space in your front yard would be perfect for a Looney McDaniel memorial.
I might do it.
Nice bronze out there.
Yeah. So let's kind of get to where we can close this out. This is another thing from the Knoxville Register. The whole affair, talking about the bridge burning incidents, exhibits beyond CAVIL, beyond Caval. I don't know. Perfect concert of action between the traitors from Chattanooga to Bristol. We are advised that there have been emissaries of the Lincoln Army in Kentucky passing and repassing through bypaths across the mountain between the forces there and Andy Johnson's Merriman. I don't know what that word is, in East Tennessee. Now, Andrew Johnson, remember, is a Tennessean, but he's Lincoln's vice president. So that's why they're saying, Andy Johnson. Although they have done much damage to the railroads, fortunately for us, their blow has been premature. We have reliable intelligence from Jimtown, which is Jamestown, about 30 minutes north of here, that the Lincoln troops, which were in force at Monticello, are retreating instead of advancing, and thus the Tennessee vandal insurrectionists have been disappointed in the support they anticipated from that quarter. The Avenger is on their track. They have again been deluded, and this time to their ruin, by that arch traitor to his country, Andrew Johnson. Arch traitor to his country. And again, that we have to think of the United States back then as a collection of states, not a union. Really, it was the United States of America, are. And after the Civil War, the United States of America is. It literally changed from a plural to a singular. And Andrew Johnson was a traitor to his country. His country was Tennessee. His allegiance was to his country. That's the way they thought of it. And everyone from Lee said the same thing when Blair, the mayor of Washington, D.C., tried to get him to take over the Union Army. He was like, I can't do that to my country. Virginia is my country. Can't draw a sword against it.
Well, a lot of the military leaders said the same thing. A lot of the generals that ended up on the South, in particular, I'm a Virginian. Was that not what Lee said on multiple occasions?
I can't draw a sword against my country.
Myrmidon, great use of that word. Love it. It's a follower or an acolyte. I love the fact that that's in there at all. That's awesome. People they wrote differently 100 years ago.
They sure did, and it's foreign to me. So I kind of close with this, since I didn't have a photograph of Looney. There's no recorded photograph of him.
Is that your basic training photo on the right there?
No. No, that's Newton MacDonald Bogle, fine Scots-Irishman who fought for the Confederacy. Because my wife's family, being Middle Tennessee, were Confederates. My family, being East Tennessee, mostly were in the Union Army. So here's her ancestor
with the Montagues and the Capulets of East Tennessee.
Exactly. And then there's the gentleman with the long white beard is Robert Abernathy Allen, who hid up in the caves in Unicoi County. And when he finally come down after the Civil War, the former Confederates that were in the community decided that he needed to die because he didn't fight for the cause, and they murdered him. And this is the last known photograph of him. So this is the mess we can get in if these politicians don't find us an off-ramp quick. And that's all I got to say about that, Dr. Fuller.
Well, and it's a shame that more of them are not students of history and don't seem to realize that this could happen. And because I think if more of them did realize it could happen, that maybe we'd have a little bit more sober thought and conversation going on than we currently seem to have.
Yeah, because guess what happened back then? They abdicated their position as well, and you saw the infighting. What was that? Senator from Mississippi broke his cane over somebody's head in the House, and all these Southern. I mean, he received thousands of canes in the mail, and a lot of people started sending canes to other Confederate senators like, hey, you should be beating the shit out of people too with canes. So I think their constituents obviously were driving this. And I think the same thing is true today. The far ends of the left and the right are driving their elected officials in those directions. So I think we all bear some responsibility in reducing the temperatures here. But I think we also have to make sure that we're prepared for a storm, for civil conflict. And let's be clear, man. I don't live in Chicago, brother. I don't live in any of these places that Trump is, I'm going to send in the National Guard to clean it up. I live in a very red county in a very red state, in a very red part of the world, and a very homogenous population of Christian conservatives, 99% Scots-Irish variety. So, I mean, I probably won't feel the effects like some places will in this country when things start going really south, if they go that way. There's a big if.
Well, homogenous societies tend to be fairly peaceful societies. And whether that's a small region of the country or entire nation, like, I don't know, Japan, it just, and good for you. I mean, that didn't happen on accident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Dr. Fuller, really, that's all I got. I teased a little bit about Looney McDaniel. We'll kind of revisit him a little bit more on Monday, just to kind of close a few loops on that. I just wanted to kind of get everybody thinking. And everybody watching this morning, everybody that listens to the podcast to come, you have your own Looney McDaniel. He just happens to be mine. There's somebody that, had they not done what they did, you would not be here. That somebody that was a thinking, intelligent, rational human being just like you and I, and they made the most reasonable decisions they could given the set of circumstances they found themselves in. And so I challenge you, go and find yours and look at what they did. These were sober, prudent, responsible people. And yet they still drove us into the nightmare of the Civil War. And are we going to have another one? My God, I certainly hope not. But we still have a lot of time left in the 46th administration. We've got the midterms coming up. We've got a new Fed chair coming in. We're still in the midst of the largest federal shutdown. And this is still a federal budgetary crisis is still the number one cause of civil wars, and has been forever, and every historian will tell you that. And yet here we are. So I thought it's appropriate to have this discussion this morning.
I think you're absolutely right, Rich, because, hey, look, folks, due to factors outside your control, the fight is coming. Be ready.